Hi, I'm Megan Van Emmen, Extension Beef Cattle Specialist with Montana State University, and today we'll be discussing body condition scoring and management. Now, body condition score describes relative fatness or body condition of the animal. It's based on a scale of 1 to 9, where 1 is an emaciated animal, most likely cannot stand up or walk, and 9 being severely obese. The average, or what we consider an optimum body condition score on average throughout the year of a cow, is a body condition score of 5. And the main reason we are discussing body condition scores is because it has a very large impact on reproduction. For example, if we look back at some older research here, looking at the number of days between calving and return to estrus. So on the left vertical axis, we have calving to heat as a number of days. And on the horizontal axis, we have a body condition score at calving. So if we just specifically look at this chart, what we can see is that as you increase body condition score or more fat condition of the animal, you decrease the number of days to return to estrus and therefore rebreeding. If we look here at a body condition score 3, which is on a thinner animal, it took almost 90 days to return to estrus. Whereas we hope as producers that our cows will return to estrus within approximately 60 days. Therefore, looking at the body condition score 5, right at about 60 days to return to estrus. This allows for uterine involution, and her body condition and energy resources to not only be used for lactation, but also have sufficient resources to prepare for the breeding season. Now, as you can look on the right side of the chart here at a body condition score 6 and 7, we can reduce the number of days to estrus after calving by increasing body condition score to a 6 or a 7. As we consider the number of days to return to estrus after calving at a 6 and a 7 body condition score, this may not be the most cost-effective option for an operation, because getting to a 6 or a 7, which are getting to be fleshier, more conditioned animals, this requires a lot more nutrition for those cows, which means extra energy and extra protein that need to be fed to get to a body condition score 6 and 7. This especially occurs with a 7, which becomes a more overly fleshy animal. It is good to go into calving season with good body condition, but we do not want to get to an extreme body condition of a 7, 8, or 9, because this can cause dystocia problems as well. So maintaining that body condition score at a 5 to a 6, that puts our return to estrus between 50 and 60 days, which is pretty optimum for preparing for the breeding season. Just another example as a percent cycling based on body condition scores. So the green bar being thinner animals, the body condition score is 1 to 4. The red bar being body condition score 5 to 6, or the optimum body condition. Or the blue bar as body condition score 7 to 9. So being overly fleshy to obese. And this is at 60 days postpartum and 90 days postpartum. And then these are body condition scores at calving. Now, once again, older research, but very true to this day. Those thinner animals at 60 days post-calving, we're only going to see about 45% cycling. Our optimum at about 60%, and about 90% for our overly fleshy or overconditioned animals. Now, by 90 days, we're looking for those thin animals about 65%, the optimum condition at 90%, and the blue overly fleshy animals at 100%. So just in that 30-day window, in that first cycle, that you would be looking for a rebreeding there at 60 days post-calving, we see a large jump of 30% in those optimum condition animals. So, like I said previously, having overly fleshy animals, if they are already overconditioned, is one thing, but to try and get them to this overconditioned score may not be cost effective and may not actually give you a huge increase in the number bred in the first cycle. So, getting these animals into this optimum condition, a 5 to a 6, plays a huge role in making sure you have animals cycling at the beginning of your breeding season and animals that are becoming pregnant at the beginning of your breeding season. So if we're looking at body condition score, we look at several areas. So we look at across the back, looking for that spine. We're looking at the tail head. Is there a lot of fat cover around the tail head area? We're going to look at her hooks and her pin bones, so the hips. We're going to look across the ribs, which is a large telltale sign of body condition score. And then we're going to look at fat fill of the brisket. So if you're looking at the hooks and the pins and the tail head, you know, we can come down here and we can see, so we're looking at fat cover. So as that animal gets thinner or lower body condition score, those animals, you know, are going to appear similar to more of like the dairy animal type hooks and pin bones. Less fat cover over that tail head hooks and pins, they begin to protrude a little bit more and therefore is a thinner animal. We're going to look at these ribs here. So if we can see the last two ribs, that's usually a telltale sign of right about of a body condition score 5. And as we get to see more ribs as we move closer to the front of the animal, that indicates a thinner animal as well. That brisket starts to tighten up and less fat. And then that spine begins, the backbone begins to protrude along the back there. So if we just look at this chart here, we have body condition score across the top and then the characteristics we're looking for. So if we look at this 5 to a 6, here the optimum, they're not physically weak, there's no muscle atrophy. On a 5, you'll see a slight outline of the spine. As a 6, you will not. The last 1 to 2 ribs will be visible to a body condition score 5, but as they move into a 6, those last 2 ribs will start to become more covered and those outlines will not be able to be seen. No fat in the brisket and the flanks. As a 6, you'll get into a brisket and flank fat cover. You will see the outline of the hips and pin bones, but it's not extremely protruding as it would be as you get into these lower condition scores, which more have that like dairy hip bone appearance. And then fat in the udder and patchy fat around the tail head, you will not see that so much in the 5 or a 6. So one other thing to keep in mind, if you have these overly fleshy animals, you can see some udder fat development, which can also have impacts on milking ability. And some research has indicated that as you get into these overly fleshy animals, they'll also start to deposit fat internally. That kidney, pelvic, and heart fat will increase and therefore could also cause some impacts on the rebreeding due to the excessive fat internally. So I know some of these pictures are a little hard to see. They're a little blurry. But if we're going to look at a body condition score too, as you can see, these hips and pin bones and that tail head is protruding. That spine is extremely protruding. You can see all of these ribs here across the animal. There's no fat in the brisket, and you can just tell that that animal doesn't look good. There's no fat cover, and they've begun to see some muscle atrophy. Now, as we move into a body condition score 3, We see a little bit of muscle atrophy, however, they are looking a little bit better. We're still seeing that hip and pin bone protrusion, tail head as well, even the spine, and we can still see some ribs here. The brisket, no fat. There is very, very little to no fat cover on this animal. Now, as we move into a 4, now some of your animals, at calving, especially your younger animals, could dip down into a 4 if they started at a body condition score 5. That's not a huge detriment. We just want to make sure that they begin on that positive plane of nutrition immediately post calving. So making sure that those little bit thinner animals that drop too much body condition can get back and be prepared for breeding season. But as you can see, we can still see those hip bones. You can see the outline of that spine and tail head as well. You can see the last few ribs of this animal. There's a little bit of fat cover, still not much here in the brisket, and there is no muscle atrophy. Now, we can sit here and look at pictures all day long. So one thing as we move here is, if you're working your cows, through a chute system, take body condition scores as you go. Write down the tag numbers. Write down the body condition scores. Have someone else body condition score your animals. Have an independent person assess your animals. This way you can get a critical assessment of their condition and how the herd is looking. Plus, you can also help this because you can get your hands on the animal. You can feel those ribs because during the winter months, they put on that winter hair coat and it can hide a lot of thinner animals with longer hair. So having your hands on the animal, feeling these landmarks can really help you make a decision on body condition score. Now, as we move into a 5, right, this is optimum, that spine, only slight outline here. That's where getting your hands on the animal, being close up to them can really help you determine the outline of the spine. Tail head, you can just see the last couple of ribs here. Still see some outline of those hips and pins, but they don't protrude as far. Still no fat in that brisket or flank, but we are starting to see some fat cover. And that animal, looks good. She looks like she's going to perform well for you. Now, as we get into a 6, that spine starts to disappear. The tail head isn't protrude as much. You can just barely see the outline of the hips and pins here. No ribs are visible, and you can start to see that this brisket is starting to fill up as well as the flank. And this is where getting close to that animal, you'll start to see the fat pockets next to the tail head on either side start to fill in. Now, as we get into a 7, once again, no ribs, brisket's starting to fill up. You can just barely make out the hips and pins. This tail head's going to start to fill in quite a bit with fat. Now we get into an 8. Getting pretty obese. You can see there's no outline of the hips and pins back here. You can even start to see this fat pocket here next to the tail head. The brisket is pretty full. No ribs visible, spine not visible. She is going to feel pretty squishy, pretty fleshy underneath your hands as you feel her. And she's just going to be pretty darn fat. Now, there's several times you can body condition score. So the first being at weaning. Weaning, I think, is one of, if you have to choose a few times, weaning is one of the times you can really get your hands on those animals, especially if you're going to do some pre-weaning work. Because that's when your animal's requirements are at their lowest. They're weaning that calf off. They don't have the lactation requirement. So if you have thin cows, you can separate them off, maybe add a little bit of extra nutrition for them, get them in better body condition going into the winter months. 45 days after weaning. Another good time, just because you can then assess, has that extra nutrition started to help some of those animals. 90 days pre-calving. Now, if you're going to do some pre-calving work, I would recommend then, but a lot of times it's too close to calving. You don't have enough time due to the extra requirements of that fetus to get some more body condition on. So if you go about 3 months before calving, they're entering late gestation. Requirements are starting to increase pretty drastically, but you have an opportunity to get some extra nutrition into those cows that might be a little thin going into the calving season. Now, if you're tagging and getting your animals weighed and vaccinated immediately at calving, this gives you an opportunity to really assess those cows as they're calving, especially if you're going to separate them off, if you have a little pen area and you're going to keep some of those calves and cows together. This allows you to add some extra nutrition that way as well for those thin animals. This can be especially important for our young, our first calf heifers that need the extra nutrition because they're still actively growing. They've just calved, they're going to have a lactation demand, and then in 60 to 90 days, you want them to rebreed for the first cycle. The next being at breeding season, getting those animals rebred is critical to maintaining your cow herd every year. So collecting a body condition score at the breeding season, making sure that they look good and they're prepared and have enough body condition because they're lactating, so they're developing that calf, and then they need to rebreed. And so basically for the rest of the summer, you're hoping that those cows are bred, so developing a fetus and lactating and, going to wean that calf off. And then late summer, early fall, or, 45 to 60 days prior to weaning. So during that pre-weaning time is also a good time to body condition. Now, if we look at our spring calving herd, here's those 6 time frames. If I was going to suggest, if you wanted to pick some crucial times to make sure that your cows look good and are ready to have that body condition for calving, breeding, and weaning, I would suggest at the weaning time frame or pre-weaning, that 90 days pre-calving, and at calving time. This will allow you to get through those crucial seasons to make sure you're maintaining those cows for your herd. So if we look at body condition scoring and those optimum conditions, we already looked at that chart in the descriptions. So here we're going to look at in this chart 100 days pre-calving. So we have our 5 and our 6 as our moderate. Right, 100 days pre-calving, she's entering late gestation. Fetal development is increasing exponentially, which means that's going to draw a huge demand on her nutrition. So if we're at an optimum condition, those cows need to just maintain their body weight and condition and only gain the weight of the fetus. We aren't looking to add any sort of body weight onto those animals. Now, if we have body condition scores 1 to 4, we want those animals to gain quite a few pounds to get up to this 5 or a 6. So if we can think about it, to change one body condition score is typically between 100 and 150 pounds to change a body condition score. So if we think about it, even these 4s need to gain body condition prior to calving. So 150 to 200 pounds. Now, they need to not only gain, and keep their fetal development, this is the additional weight gain needed to help with increasing to a body condition score 5. And we can move down through the other thinner body condition scores as well. But this keeps in mind that some extra nutrition is going to be needed for some of these thinner animals, but waiting until 100 days prior to calving may not be the best time to do this because of that increased nutrient demand on the cow. Because she's trying to develop that fetus in that last 90 to 100 days. And then you're also asking her to gain weight, which means you're going to need a more nutrient-dense diet. We may end up having to bring some of those cows closer to home, feed them some extra feeds, such as a high-quality hay or some grain to make sure that they have the energy to put on some of that fat condition. Now, when we get to the 7, 8, 9, we don't really want them to gain weight. We want them, like as a 7, they don't need to gain any weight. They can maintain their body weight because that fetus can draw on her excessive body condition to develop. But also may not be the best option because we want to ensure that that cow still looks good at calving and still has enough energy. So if we don't give her anything and we're just relying on that body condition, we can see some detriments to fetal development and calving difficulties if we're only requiring her to rely on her body condition. The same with our 8s and our 9s, are extremely obese animals. 100 days pre-calving really isn't the time you want her to lose 100 to 150 pounds to get down to a 5 or a 6, because we need her to be in a positive nutrition plane when she hits calving due to the extra energy demand that will bring. So yes, they can lose a little bit of weight, but we still want to make sure she's getting sufficient energy every day to help get her through the extra energy demand at calving. So this is just a table just describing a pregnant animal going from a 3 to a 5 to a 7 body condition score, and then a lactating animal doing the same. Now I know this is a little bit dated information because we still have a 1,000-pound cow here, which the majority of producers do not have anymore. The average body weight of cows in the country right now is 1,350. But we can see here the requirements those animals have to go from a 3 to a 5, gaining 1 1/3 pounds per day, or going from a 7 to a 5, losing 1 1/3 pounds per day. So these animals that are going from a 3 to a 5 require extra protein and extra energy compared to those that are already at a 5. Well, if we get to a 7, they don't require as much protein and energy. But like I said, depending on when you want this to occur, the last 100 days probably isn't the best time, because we need her to be in a positive energy plane as she goes into calving and then into lactation. Now, when she's lactating, going from a 3 to a 5, we have to increase her protein and energy quite a bit to get her to jump up to that 5 from a 3. Whereas we don't need quite as much energy and protein to go from a 7 to a 5. Now this might be a little bit better time frame to do this, going from a 7 to a 5. But by the time she hits the breeding season, we still want her in a positive nutrition plane to ensure a successful rebreeding. So the best time to really increase or decrease your body condition scores to those optimums would be in the fall post-weaning, when that fetus isn't putting a huge demand on the cow. We have that opportunity for her to create some more energy storage and body condition for that, moving up from a 3 to a 5. Or she can have the opportunity to lose a little bit of body condition to go down to a 5 from a 7 during that fall time, because she has the energy storage and that fetus is not putting a huge demand on her nutrient requirements. So if we calculate this out, for us to, for them to gain 1 1/3 pounds to go up from a 3 to a 5, it's going to take about 100 days. Whereas the 7 to a 5, losing 1 1/3 pounds a day, is going to take about 125 days. So changing body condition takes time. It isn't an overnight change. So that's one reason when your body condition scoring is, have somebody come out and do it with you, because you're, as a producer, looking at those animals every day. Whereas having someone new come out and assess body condition score, they haven't seen those animals, or maybe it's been a while since they've seen those animals, so they can offer a more critical assessment. So if we think about nutrient requirements, as we touched on a little bit here, so post-calving, So that huge lactation demand is when nutrient requirements are at their highest. Pregnant and lactating, so that would be right after the breeding season, they're still moderate to high requirements, just mainly due to the lactational demand. And then we get to mid-gestation, which is around weaning. And those are when our requirements are at their lowest, or the most critical time we can use to put body condition score on our thinner animals, or have some of our obese animals lose a little bit of body condition. And then we get back into pre-calving, which is a more moderate, I would even say moderate to high requirements due to that fetus beginning to grow and require more nutrients. So really mid-gestation is our critical time to do the body condition scores and provide extra nutrition to those thinner animals. I know we talk a lot more about our thinner animals than our fatter animals. And that's just because usually our fatter animals can overcome some of our nutritional deficiencies compared to a thinner animal. Now, if we look at a 1,300-pound cow at mid or late gestation, or during lactation, dry matter requirements every day on a percentage body weight, and then the energy they require and the protein they require. So ensuring that your nutritional program increases, whether it's nutrient density in the diet you're feeding her, or adding supplements to increase the nutrient density of your diet, needs to be done to meet the nutrient demand of that animal. And like I said, we're almost doubling the energy and we're doubling the protein requirements of those animals at lactation because of that high lactational demand on energy and protein. Now, this is just a chart determining the differences. This is at mid-gestation, so when requirements are at their lowest, from an 11, 13, or 1,500 pound cow. So looking at dry matter again on a percent body weight and pounds per day, but looking at the different demands that those animals require for energy and protein. Larger animals require additional energy and protein to maintain their body weight. Now, one thing that's happened in the United States is that our average body weight for our cows has increased over the years. Like I said previously, 1,350 is the average body weight of a cow right now in the United States. So we're right in this 1,300 pound range. So meeting these requirements. Now, this doesn't mean that you have cows out there that for their frame score 1,500 pounds isn't extreme, or you have smaller framed animals wherein it's 1,100 pound cows. It's just maintaining these nutrient requirements for maintenance. These requirements are at maintenance. These requirements are not for gaining body weight. So a couple tips to think about when you're body condition scoring animals. Choose a couple of times a year to do this, and that can be whether you're driving in the pasture, rolling out a hay bale, and because when you roll it out, you got to drive right back by those cows. Just drive down through there once every 2-3 weeks and make a critical assessment of some of your cows. Write those tag numbers down. Write the body condition score down. This way you can see, are the cows losing body condition or are they gaining? Body condition score is the best way to determine if some of your diet choices are meeting the demands of those animals at their production stage. And if you can, have a second person out there with you to also write down body condition scores. Have somebody that's going to be critical of the cows, not to a fault, not to be detrimental, but to help to critically assess the body condition score of cows to determine whether or not nutritional demands are being met. I'm Megan Van Emmen, Extension Beef Cattle Specialist with Montana State University. Thanks for listening and have a great day.